Hey everybody, Mrs. BK here. I am here to walk you through your final summative memo, and this is really for if A, you were absent many days or a couple days and you missed some stuff, or B, you seem to have lost all of your paperwork and all the notes we did in class, and you need some help. This is a summative assessment, so please remember to do it, okay? It is our hardest one that we do, though, okay? So I'm going to walk you through a couple things that you need to know about it. So, first things first, on Classroom, you're going to find a final summative memo, turn in here. That is where everything that we did in class is contained. So I'm going to walk you through the parts. I'm going to pause or tell you to pause so that you can write down some ideas and some brainstorming and whatnot and get ready for your final part. Below that, there are different formative memos. These are the things we did together in class. As you can see, not everybody did this. So if you were somebody that sat back and relaxed when we were literally doing this all in class together, I don't know what to tell you, but it's not going to be a fun process to kind of redo everything. But at this point, if you didn't do the formative memos, I want you to watch this video and I want you to just focus on the formal final summative memo to the president, and you're going to do the legwork on your own on some scrap piece of paper, okay? So, first things first. You are going to go ahead and open up President's Dilemma opening memo, okay? And the memo from the president says the following. I'm going to let you go ahead and take a moment, pause this, and read it. So at this point, you should have read that once on your own. So the president is writing to you, a member of the task force of the Economic Council, and he is telling you of some significant economic problems, and he's asking you for your help. So these three problems, 12% unemployment, 9% inflation, and GDP dropping by 13%, pretty significant, aka we are definitely in a recession. He also wants you to try to think about not increasing our debt, and he also wants you to think about oil prices. Okay, oil prices are also going up, and oil prices are important because oil is a commodity that A, everybody uses, and B, if oil prices are high, then that means our goods and services are going to increase in price as well because trucks deliver things to different places. Okay. So in a moment, I'm going to have you brainstorm some ideas on this question he asks you here. Send me a memo ASAP with your analysis of how current unemployment, inflation, and economic growth compare to leading economic indicators of the past. Okay? So back out of that, you're going to open economic indicators. Okay, so we talked about these in class. These things are sort of what economists use to kind of judge and generalize how our economy is doing. You should know what GDP is by now. If not, in a moment, you can pause this and read this over. You should know what inflation means, and you should know what an unemployment rate is. We talked about those things really in Unit 1, so this should be a little bit of a review here. CPI is completely new, though. So a CPI is an economic indicator where we look at the average price of a fixed market basket of consumer goods and services that are commonly bought by households. So this is usually in reference to basic goods. So what are people spending weekly on groceries? What are they spending weekly on filling up their gas tanks? That's really what this is getting at. Okay, so if you need to, once again, take a pause and then press play when you're ready to continue. We're going to move on. So for our first brainstorm, which was memo number 1, we in class looked at what is called the table for President's Dilemma. So the President's Dilemma table PDF, you want to open that. I'm going to zoom in. And these things at the top. So GDP, change GDP, discount rate, consumer price index, rate of inflation, unemployment rate, and public debt are what we call the economic indicators. So I want you to find a scrap piece of paper, and you're going to write at first on the top, memo number 1, brainstorm. And you're going to do some brainstorming so that you have an idea for your final memo for this section, okay? So for the indicators GDP and change GDP, okay? For GDP, you want to look at real GDP. That's our GDP after we deduct all the inflation differences and whatnot. So that's the number that we care about. Change in GDP is a percentage. For both of those, the higher the better. So we want a positive number in the billions. We want a positive percent change for GDP. The discount rate is the rate that the Federal Reserve gives to banks for short-term loans if we are in a crisis. So that is something that you definitely could look at too, and thinking if this is lower, if it's a lower rate, then that means the economy is in pretty good standing. Then the next one over, you have that consumer price index, right? So the higher that percentage, the higher percentage that people are spending on their groceries and a gallon of gas, that's not going to be great. So we want that number fairly low. And the rest of them, we all want to see low: rate of inflation, unemployment rate, and public debt. So go ahead. I want you guys to pick 3 of the economic indicators on here, 3 of them, and I want you to find a trend. Are the numbers going up? Are they going down over a certain time? Look at the dates. You have from 1929 down to 2006. What is one trend that you're seeing? Do you see it spike in a particular year? Does it then drastically fall? Think about U.S. history. What was going on? So go ahead, pause this, and come back when you're done. All right, congratulations. You just brainstormed memo number 1. So now you're going to go through 3 different groups of people are going to come to the Council of Economic Advisors, and they're going to essentially complain to you and say, hey, I am being affected by this, by such and such, and I need you guys to help it, okay? The first one that you are going to go ahead and click on is President's Dilemma Memo 2, Job Security. Okay. And group number 1, and you might want to write this down on your scrap paper. Maybe write group 1, the unemployed. So the president is forwarding this to us, Economic Council, and it is a letter from Joe. In the campaign for job security, Maria Batista wrote it, and she's sending a representative that is pretty angry about the economic issues. So go ahead, pause this, and give this a read, please. Come back when you're done. Okay, if you're back, you must have read this over. So just to kind of highlight a couple things, so these people are unemployed, they are extremely worried, and they have a lot of issues, okay? They are worried about unemployment, they are worried about affording things, and they're worried about finding a job. If you can see here in this middle section, that's pretty important. Currently, 52% of unemployed workers are concerned about losing their jobs. The second thing that's important in here is that it suggests to you some ideas of what you could do to try and solve this economic crisis, according to them. You got to keep that in mind. This is according to the unemployed interest group here that has some ideas, okay? They want you to implement measures that increase the buying power of the middle class and that provide training for individuals that lose their jobs. So pause for a moment here. What is he asking you or suggesting? What kind of policies could you develop to particularly help the unemployed? By policies, you want to think about the 2 types of fiscal policy that the government can do and the 2 types of monetary policy that the Federal Reserve can do. So if you need to, go back through your notes that we took over fiscal and monetary policies over the last couple weeks, double check those, and come back when you're done. So hopefully you double checked your notes and you brainstorm some ideas. You should have thought about that if you are trying to help the unemployed workers and paying attention to what Joe is saying here, that you would need to use expansionary fiscal policies. Okay? So what you're going to do now is you're going to recap for unemployed worker group number 1. You're going to do 2 things. Write down, remind yourself, what are their concerns? Okay, what are their concerns that they're coming to you with? And 2, what are possible things that you can do, or tell the president rather to do, that might help the unemployed people in the United States? So go ahead, pause this on your piece of paper, jot down some of those ideas, please.